Okay, so this video is going to focus on handout 2G, which is carbohydrates, our first biomolecule. And so carbohydrates make up some structures of our body, but when you think of carbohydrates, really what you should just think of is sugar, because all carbohydrates are made of sugar. We have different types of sugars that build carbohydrates, but all carbohydrates are sugar. So let's go to the video. Let's go to the handout, and let's look at different types of carbohydrates. So single sugars, also known as simple sugars, are called monosaccharides. Mono means one, saccharide means sugar. So we actually have three really common monosaccharides that we eat and that can be incorporated into our body structure. And those are glucose, fructose, and galactose. Now, I'm going to focus on glucose because glucose is the monosaccharide that we burn as fuel. When you eat sugar, more complex sugars have to be broken into glucose for our body to be able to burn it as energy. In fact, everything we eat has to be broken into glucose in order for us to burn it as fuel. So I'm going to zoom in here. Whoops. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit if I can get my document camera to work. And I want to look at this structure of glucose, and it's this middle molecule. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you on any of the tests to tell me the structure of these monosaccharides, but what I will ask you is some things about glucose. Now, if you look, all sugars are a ringed structure. So you can see like galactose, fructose, glucose, they're all a ringed structure. They're actually all the same chemical makeup. They're C6H12O6. So they've got 6 carbons, 6 oxygens, and 12 hydrogens, C6H12O6. But they have different shapes. They have different structures. And so they're called isomers. But glucose is this important one. And the reason why it's important is because it's the sugar that our body uses as fuel. Another example of a sugar or a carbohydrate are disaccharides. Di means two, saccharide means sugar. So if we have two sugars, we have two monosaccharides stuck together like this. Now, the most common disaccharide that we may hear about is the disaccharide sucrose. And sucrose is table sugar. It is the sugar that we bake with. It's the sugar in all of our food. It's the sugar you sprinkle on your cereal, or what you make brownies out of, or what's in soda pop. It's actually a disaccharide called sucrose. Now, if we eat a disaccharide like sucrose, we're going to have to break it down and make glucose out of it. And so remember, everything that we burn as fuel has to be glucose. So yet we eat a bunch of disaccharides. Another example of a disaccharide would be maltose. That is the sugar in grain, like rice, wheat, barley. And then we've got milk sugar. That's a disaccharide called lactose. But these are all disaccharides. And when we eat them, we've got enzymes that are going to break them down and turn them into glucose. So we don't really have a lot of disaccharides as part of our body structure, but we eat them. Another type of carbohydrate is called polysaccharides. Now, polysaccharides are going to be multiple monosaccharides all bonded together. Sorry, I have kind of a glare on this camera, but you can see a whole string of monosaccharides bonded together. That makes up a polysaccharide. Poly means many, saccharide means sugar. So they're what we call complex sugars. Now, we've got several different types of carbohydrates that we actually eat, and we've got one major one that is a part of our body. Our body is going to manufacture a big polysaccharide as stored energy called glycogen. So I just wrote here that glycogen is stored energy. This is the energy that animals store. We make it in our liver, and we store it as energy in the liver. Starch is another example of a polysaccharide. Starch is a plant polysaccharide so that the plant can store energy. And you know starches because like a potato is starch or pasta is a starch. And we eat potatoes and bread and pasta. And then we're going to take that starch and break it back into single monosaccharide glucoses to burn as fuel. So the plant is storing its energy as polysaccharides in the form of starch. Plants also make a polysaccharide called cellulose. And cellulose is a polysaccharide that humans can't actually break down. Cellulose is often called fiber because our digestive system cannot break it down. And when we eat it, it just passes right through us and we poop it out. Now, when we eat cellulose, we don't have an enzyme that'll break it into glucose pieces. So, like I said, it's just going to go right through you and you poop it out. So you might ask, well, why is fiber so important in our diet? They always say that you should have a high fiber diet and that you should eat a lot of fiber. Well, what fiber does is it acts like a scrub brush as it's moving through your intestines, and it scrub brushes out all the nasty gunk that is being trapped in your large intestine. In other words, your colon. So it helps clean you out, which protects you against certain cancers like colon cancer, because it's scrubbing out that colon. And so even though it has no nutritional value, fiber, aka cellulose, is going to be an important dietary substance because it acts like this scrub brush. Okay, so that is a little crash course in carbohydrates. Basically, we need carbohydrates to make energy. So remember, all energy is going to be in the form of glucose. And we're going to break down carbohydrates, whether they're disaccharides or polysaccharides, into glucose molecules that we can burn as fuel. We'll learn how we actually burn glucose in chapter 3. So stay tuned to that. Now I am ready to move on to our next biomolecule, which are proteins, and that's going to be in our next video. So I'll catch you later.